So the last in the presentation today is Professor Suzanne Turner, who's talking about the links between Cambridge and Kampala with the Uganda-Cambridge Cancer Initiative collaboration. Suzanne.
Good afternoon, everyone. So the Uganda-Cambridge Cancer Initiative, as it's now called, started back in 2018 when Corinna Olberg, who's in the audience, invited my colleague here, Maike, and then later myself, over to Entebbe in Uganda to give a talk there at the Virus Institute. And in our trip there, we went to visit the Uganda Cancer Institute in Kampala, which you can see here. This building here in the background, here's one of their breast cancer screening buses here in the foreground. And essentially, the collaboration has grown since then. And it's really grown from the ground up, from the needs of the researchers, the clinicians, the scientists out there, and us adapting to how we can help them. And so this is the new building, which has currently gone up in Kampala. I think Corinna probably hasn't seen these photos, but this was back in March when I was out there. And you can see that the new build is going to be fantastic. It's an amazingly huge, I'm very jealous. I'm going to move my lab out there, I think. It's going to be a fantastic institute when it's all clad out. And so we're really looking towards training, capacity building, and research in our collaboration. And so, first of all, we're a triple act this afternoon. I'm going to pass on to my colleague Maike de la Roche from the Cambridge Cancer Institute, who's going to talk about the training. And then my colleague here, Evelyn Brealey from Cambridge Global Health Partnerships, based at Addenbrooke's Hospital, who's going to talk about some of the clinical aspects of what we've been doing. And then I'll finish off talking a little bit about some of the more fundamental, basic research that we've been doing.
Thank you so much. And I have to apologize. This was supposed to be a double act with Nixon here, Nixon Niyonzima, who is our partner in crime. So when we went there, Corinna and I, when we visited the UCI and met Jackson, the director, and Nixon, his director of research, we came back and we were discussing what we could do coming from here, the CRUK Cambridge Research Institute, an institute that is having fantastic core facilities and doing state-of-the-art world-class cancer research, or that's what we are aiming to do. And by coming back to Cambridge, then we said, okay, maybe together with our director, Greg Hannon, we agreed, and with really in partnership and with full support from Cambridge Africa, to develop a summer research program. And we wanted to do it from, as Suzanne said, from the bottom up. So we wanted to already not generate the clinicians, or we wanted to have undergraduate students that we wanted to provide high-quality cancer research training to the African research community, but also promote a shared research experience for us too, and build a global community. And our now 8-week summer school is highly immersive, and that Greg and I, we were very, very pushing forward to this. So our students, here shown, they have really hands-on from the first day, hands-on experience. They can obviously enjoy our world-class facilities. They pursue, by the end, depending on the stage, their own research question. We do, and Ann Kaminsky is also leading this, a mini symposium together with our the rest of our summer student cohort. We normally, I have to say, Maria and Faith are hopefully here online. Our students this year, they were supposed to be here and network, but are sadly delayed with visas, and we try to accommodate them in Cambridge colleges and give them the whole Cambridge experience. So this is just to remind us, so Nixon put this in. You can see here that all our summer students, so we had 2 summer schools so far with 2 students, they walk basically, and this might be for every cancer research, through our core facilities. So they get a huge background knowledge, and then they go, and these are our students so far. So Paul and Henry were the first ones when really Cambridge Africa supported us immediately and got this off the ground, so thanks to Caroline. And they are now, so they did working on circulating tumor DNA with world leaders in our institute, or on genomics, breast cancer genomics. Resti worked on innate lymphocytes, and Faith also did lots of molecular biology. And you can see that that's what they said to us. It was not only a dream come true for them, but it really shaped their research career. And they are also want to pass this on to the next generation of students. And you can see they have been actually quite successful. They're either finishing their PhD, Paul, their masters, they are lab scientists and doing PhD application, or have just secured a PhD position in the US. So we are very proud of them. And here are Maria and Faith, so hopefully online. We can't wait to have you. And yeah, we're looking very much forward. And this is something that we are discussing with Caroline and especially really from these cohort, they said, wouldn't it be nice if we could also reach more people and it was really and create more of a community and more of an impact. And we are now thinking of maybe we also should do a reverse summer school with us going out and teaching some basic methods. So that's it, Tommy. Thank you.
Hello. So I'm going to just talk about the clinical partnerships a little bit, and just to go back a few steps. So Cambridge Global Health Partnerships, as Suzanne said, is based on the Cambridge Biomedical Campus. We work mainly with the NHS institutions on the campus and across Cambridgeshire supporting health partnerships. So clinicians coming together and sharing and learning practice. And Cambridge is known as a centre of excellence, and it didn't sit well with me that we didn't have a programme and a partnership on cancer. And then we learnt about Jackson and his team coming over from Kampala a few years ago. And so we took that opportunity to have an event at the Li Ka-shing Centre on the campus, and we invited people who were interested, involved, wanted to get involved. And one of those is Denise Williams, who's a paediatric oncologist who's here today. And that then led to discussions, and they were in the hospitals, meeting with clinicians in the hospitals. Denise then went with the team in January 2020 out to Kampala. And then from that, this has grown. Of course, then the pandemic arrived. But I have to say, some of my highlights, I think, on Zoom in the pandemic were the meetings that we have as the Uganda-Cambridge Cancer Initiative, when we all come together from across the university, from across CRUK, some of the clinicians in Cambridge, and then our colleagues and partners in Kampala. And so it's amazing what the teams have been able to do despite the pandemic, and now, of course, looking forward. So it's a shocking statistic. We've started on paediatric cancers. It's a shocking statistic that the survival rate for childhood cancers in high-income countries is 80%, and in low and middle-income countries, it's less than 20%. So a study that was published late 2020 found that the survival rate for childhood cancers in Uganda was well below the WHO global target of 60%. So as I say, the teams are working together, and so far, just over the last couple of years, they've collected data on chemotherapy prescriptions and transcription, and analysed these for 78 patients and identified areas for improvement. They've agreed plans to develop training for nurses in the childhood cancer ward, and then to establish parent support groups to really support the parents and carers in becoming more understanding of the cancer and the treatment that their child has, and then becoming more involved in their care. So last week, a team from Cambridge University Hospitals and CGHP, Cambridge Global Health Partnerships, was in Kampala. And my colleague Fiona went and met with Shauna, who's a pharmacist. So this will hopefully work. Does it come up wherever you are to be able to play the video?
My name is Shauna Jojadongwara. I'm a pharmacist at the Uganda Cancer Institute. I have extreme passion and interest in pediatric oncology. Currently, I'm the only pharmacist, dedicated pharmacist, helping with the children on the wards here, and I got aware of these partnerships earlier on last year with Cambridge. I started with developing of protocols, treatment protocols for the children. These partnerships have given me a milestone. I have been introduced to other societies I'd never heard of, SIO, and I've done really well. It has exposed pharmacy as well. Now pharmacists, normally if you check these clinical partnerships, pharmacists are less involved, but I'm advocating at the moment for us to be incorporated really well in these partnerships, because then we are vital as well. The multidisciplinary team must actually have, or should potentially have, a pharmacist. We are frontline for medicines, so we are the ones that would know what's best for what. So I would encourage that these partnerships reach out to us. We really would like to learn. Please, things that we advocate for, that they are introducing, that these pharmacists come with, are trainings. They work in low, middle income countries. So this is a very good initiative that Cambridge University is doing, and we appreciate and we hope that this is the beginning of pediatric oncopharmacy in Uganda. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm just going to give you a little insight into some of the research that we've been doing with the Uganda Cancer Institute. And I guess for many of you, I don't need to introduce this particular cancer. So endemic Burket lymphoma is a cancer that was first described by this guy here in the middle, quite a remarkable man, a surgeon from Ireland, from Dublin, who sort of travelled across sub-Saharan Africa and noted that there were children with this unusual jaw tumour. And they happened to live in this very area here where we also see malaria. And there was one of his first discoveries, the discovery that there could be an infectious causative agent in cancer. So malaria. He also, of course, went on to send those samples back to London, and the Epstein-Barr virus was discovered. So again, another key discovery, a virus, not just a parasite, but also a virus involved in a cancer. And of course, he then went on to treat children in his kitchen with methotrexate, first to show that chemotherapy could really work in treating these children. And of course, it was thought that this was a sarcoma, this big mass in the jaw, but we now know that it's a lymphoma, a cancer of the immune system. And this is the hut at the Uganda Cancer Institute where Dennis used to work, and it's still there now, and it's now a play centre, as you can see. Now, Burket lymphoma isn't just specific to sub-Saharan Africa. We have Burket lymphoma here as well. And you can see in this country and across Europe, for example, about 50% of the lymphomas we see in children are Burket lymphoma, very similar to the statistics we see in Africa, and particularly here in Uganda. We call it sporadic Burket lymphoma when it happens here because it's not associated with malaria, although is sometimes associated with EBV, whereas in Uganda and sub-Saharan Africa, we call it endemic Burket lymphoma. And when we look at them under the microscope, they look completely the same. These small blue round cell tumours, we call them, but very different presentations. So this little girl here has one of those sarcomas-looking things, which is actually the lymphoma in the jaw. And this is Alex. Alex, unfortunately, didn't survive his diagnosis of B-cell lymphoma, a little boy up in Manchester, and I work very closely with his parents. So we still have issues across the range, and actually, we can learn a lot from one another. Because whilst there are differences in perhaps the etiology and pathogenesis of these diseases, ultimately they look and behave very similarly. So we have different problems across the world. With sporadic Burket's lymphoma, we see very few cases in comparison to endemic. So most of the endemic cases of Burket's are seen over there in sub-Saharan Africa. As Evelyn mentioned, survival is much lower, 10 to 70%, depending on what region the child lives in. In the UK and in Europe, survival is as much as 95 to 98% now. We've done fantastically well. There's no reason why we shouldn't be achieving that in other regions. And partly why we have such successful treatment here is because we give these children very intense chemotherapy that often leaves them in intensive care. So survival's great, but these children have lifelong problems in many cases. A lot of the children in Uganda, on the other hand, don't get that opportunity. We can only give them very limited chemotherapy because we don't have intensive care facilities. So we've got a lot to learn from one another. And can we do that? Can we learn from each of these populations how, for our sporadic cases, we identify the children that we're over-treating, who we may be able to de-escalate the doses for? How can we trial novel agents in this population as well? How do you give a new drug to a population of children who already do really well on existing drugs? In comparison, with endemic Burket lymphoma, we're undertreating. We need to work out the opposite. How do we escalate the dose without the side effects? And you might argue that this is the ripe population for testing novel therapeutics. So there's a lot to learn from one another. And in my lab, we've been very much interested in sporadic, and in Jackson Orum's lab over in the Uganda Cancer Institute, in endemic Burket lymphoma. And so there's obvious synergy in what we both want to achieve. And so at the UCI, we are, as I've put there, innovating for Africa. This is Jamie, PhD student from my lab, Marta, a postdoc, and this is Sylvester, who's at the UCI. And they've been working together to set up a lab over at the Uganda Cancer Institute where we have a bioresource. So it's one of the first bioresources of fresh tumour tissue. And we can grow this fresh tumour tissue in mice. We can do all sorts of things with that tissue in mice and look at the biology of those tumours, comparing the sporadic and the endemic forms. Marta, in particular, is looking at developing a very early diagnostic assay. Here she has one of these little portable sequencers, the MinION. Can we detect EBV infections in malaria clinics? And are these the children we should be following up? Are these the children at risk from developing endemic Burket lymphoma? Are these the children that we would then be able to treat earlier with lower doses of chemotherapy and have more successful outcomes? And so really, is there a lot of work going on there? And of course, I have to thank the people that are funding this. None of this would have started, of course, without the Albarada Trust and the Global Challenges Research Fund, which we did have access to when it existed. And that really got things going. The Alex Hume Foundation, set up by Alex's parents, have really been instrumental in helping this research activity in our lab. And I'm really pleased that this has now spawned other research grants. So I can tell you that we now have 2 research grants, one from the Children's Cancer and Leukemia Group together with the Little Princess Trust in the UK, and one from Great Ormond Street Charity, who are funding that work now to look in the malaria clinics for early detection, and the other project looking at the biology in the mouse models. And of course, the important stuff here, the acknowledgements, the people that actually do the work. So I just wanted to put some faces to names. So this is Jackson Oram here, who's director of the Uganda Cancer Institute. Nixon, that Maike already introduced, who's director of research. This is Joyce Kadambula. Joyce is a paediatric oncologist at the UCI who has been working very closely with Denise, who is also in the audience today. And this is Gariga. Gariga is another paediatric oncologist that we're working with. And that's Sylvester, the technician that we're working with over there as well. And so it's really been a fantastic experience where I think we are learning more, so much from this experience that's helping our research as much as they are from us. And so I will end it there because I can see you're on the edge of your seat.